There is a nerve in your body that has become quite popular over the last few years, to the point where it's trying to challenge the popularity of the ever so proud sciatic nerve. But this other nerve is called the vagus nerve, and if you've spent any time on wellness social media, you may have heard that stimulating your vagus nerve is the solution to anxiety, inflammation, depression, chronic pain, and probably whatever else that's ailing you. Now, some of that isn't totally wrong, but some of it is, we'll say, a little enthusiastically optimistic. So today, we're gonna do something the internet rarely does with the vagus nerve, and that is start with the actual anatomy. We're gonna look at where this nerve comes from, where it goes, and what it's doing along the way, and what makes it so unique. We'll see why it influences so many autonomic functions throughout your body, like digestion and influencing your heart, and then we'll take an honest look at what vagus nerve stimulation can and can't do, based on what the anatomy and the current evidence actually supports. It's going to be a nervous one. So let's jump into this anatomical and physiological awesomeness. So of course, let's start with the anatomy of the vagus nerve, because understanding its anatomy makes it much easier to understand both how it functions and why it's so unique. The vagus nerve is the 10th of 12 cranial nerves, and the cranial nerves are often labeled with Roman numerals. The Roman numeral for 10 is X, so you'll often see the vagus nerve labeled in this way. Now, one of the unique features of the vagus nerve is just how long it is. Unlike most cranial nerves that remain relatively close to the head and neck, this one travels much farther. In fact, the word vagus comes from the Latin word meaning wandering, which is exactly what this nerve does. The vagus nerve originates from the medulla oblongata, which you can see on this brain dissection. Next, it exits the skull through the jugular foramen. In anatomy, foramen refers to a hole or opening, and it's a little tricky to get a straight-on view of the jugular foramen with a fixed camera angle. But here, you can see the beginning of the right jugular foramen where I have the probe. But on the left side, you can see that I've fed a rubber band through the inside of the skull, and here you can see the rubber band coming through to the outside of the skull. And this is how the vagus nerve exits the skull. It then descends down through the neck next to the internal carotid artery and the internal jugular vein. And this is a dissection of the right side of the neck just to orient you here. But right here in my probe, I have the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve then moves down into the thorax and eventually into the abdomen. And keep in mind that most nerves are paired. So you actually have two vagus nerves, a right vagus nerve and a left vagus nerve. And as they travel through the body, they will give off multiple branches to different organs along the way. In the neck, the vagus nerve gives off branches to the pharynx, which is the throat that you can see here, as well as the larynx, which is the voice box. And so this nerve is involved in swallowing and producing your voice. In fact, as a fun little FYI, one of the branches of the vagus nerve, the recurrent laryngeal nerve, is particularly vulnerable during thyroid surgery because it runs immediately behind the thyroid gland. And sometimes during that procedure, it can be accidentally damaged, which can leave someone with a hoarse voice or even make it difficult to speak normally. But as the vagus nerve continues through the thorax, it sends branches to the heart and lungs. Then after passing into the abdomen, it helps innervate organs including the stomach, the liver, pancreas, and most of the intestine. Now again, most cranial nerves serve structures in the head and neck, but as we've just seen, the vagus nerve is the exception. It leaves the head and continues all the way into the chest and abdomen, making it by far the most widely distributed of all the cranial nerves. Now, simply reaching all of these different organs doesn't explain why the vagus nerve has become such a popular topic online. But to understand that, we need to look at what this nerve is actually doing, which means we are going to take a look at the inside of this nerve. Nerves are made up of multiple nerve fibers that are actually the axons of cells called neurons. Neurons are specialized cells that transmit electrical signals throughout the nervous system. And one way that was helpful for me to think about this when I was a student was to compare a nerve to an extension cord. The whole extension cord would be the nerve, but if we cut into the extension cord, you would see that it was made up of multiple copper wires. Each wire inside would be a nerve fiber in this example. So just like an extension cord is made up of multiple copper wires, a nerve is made up of multiple nerve fibers. And the vagus nerve follows the same pattern. However, we are going to see that there are some different types of copper wires or different types of nerve fibers found within the vagus nerve. Within the vagus nerve, some nerve fibers carry information from the brain out to the internal organs, while others carry information from the organs back to the brain. The fibers carrying information from the brain to the organs are called efferent fibers. When I was a student, I thought E for exit. The signal is exiting the brain and going towards the organs. The other fibers carry sensory information from the organs back to the brain are called afferent fibers. Now, what's surprising is that roughly 80% of the nerve fibers within the vagus nerve are actually afferent, meaning most of the information traveling through this nerve is sensory information going from your organs back to your brain. A helpful way to picture this is to imagine a 10-lane highway. About 8 lanes of traffic are traveling from your organs towards your brain, while only 2 lanes are traveling from your brain back to your organs. So although most people think of the vagus nerve as carrying commands from the brain to the body, most of the traffic is actually moving in the opposite direction. But let's look at those efferent fibers first. These fibers carry commands from the brain to glands, smooth muscle of organs, and the cardiac muscle of the heart, making them one of the major components of your parasympathetic nervous system, often referred to as your rest and digest system. So when vagal activity increases, it generally slows your heart rate, and it also stimulates glands throughout the digestive system to release digestive secretions, including saliva, stomach acid, mucus, digestive enzymes, and other substances that help break down food. It also causes the smooth muscle within the walls of the digestive tract to contract, helping to propel food along the system. In addition, it regulates the smooth muscle within the airways, influencing airway diameter and airflow through the bronchial tree. And so as you can see, even though these efferent fibers make up only about 20% of the nerve fibers within the vagus nerve, they still exert remarkable control over the function of many of your organs. But the other 80% of the nerve is doing something different. Those afferent fibers are constantly monitoring what's happening inside your body, including things like the stretch of the stomach after a meal, the fullness of your intestines, changes in blood pressure, and signals coming from your heart and lungs. The vagus nerve then carries that information back to the brain, allowing your brain to continuously monitor what's happening inside many of your internal organs and make the adjustments necessary to keep them functioning properly. And so now that we have an understanding of how your vagus nerve facilitates this constant two-way communication between your brain and internal organs, it becomes a little bit easier to understand why this nerve has attracted so much attention over the last several years. And with all this talk about the vagus nerve being part of your rest and digest system, we should probably take a second to talk about nutrition. Because one of the biggest challenges with nutrition isn't actually knowing what the healthy foods are, it's consistently making good choices in the real world. Most of us aren't eating perfectly planned meals every day. We're eating at restaurants, grabbing takeout, traveling, or trying to fit meals into busy schedules. And that's exactly where Alma comes in. Alma is an AI nutrition coach that lets you log meals by voice or photo in seconds. It also allows you to log recipes and will actually suggest ingredient swaps to better fit your macronutrient goals. And it can even change the recipe to fit a vegan, keto, or any other lifestyle choice that you may have. What I also like about Alma is that it goes beyond calories and macros. Alma focuses on the overall quality of your diet and gives you personalized feedback based on what you actually eat. Throughout the week, you can ask questions about meals, restaurant choices, or how to make healthier decisions. And then each week, Alma provides a coaching report with practical insights and a few specific suggestions to help you improve over time. It's designed to work with your lifestyle instead of expecting you to completely change it. So if you're looking for a practical way to improve your nutrition without spending hours meal prepping or obsessing over every calorie, be sure to check out Alma and use my code IHA15 to receive $15 off an annual Alma subscription. That information, along with the link, will be in the description below. Thanks again to Alma for sponsoring today's video. And now, let's get back to the vagus nerve. So if the vagus nerve is constantly exchanging information between your brain and many of your internal organs, it's probably not hard to see why scientists became so interested in it. If a single nerve helps regulate your heart rate, digestion, breathing, swallowing, and many other autonomic functions throughout the body, then it's reasonable to ask, what happens if we intentionally change the activity of this nerve? And could this result in positive health outcomes? As it turns out, the answer is yes. Vagus nerve stimulation is a legitimate medical therapy that has been used for years to treat conditions such as drug-resistant epilepsy, which would be seizures that don't respond well to medications. And more recently, it has also been approved for certain patients with treatment-resistant depression. Researchers are also investigating its potential role in conditions ranging from stroke rehabilitation, migraines, and certain inflammatory disorders, although the evidence for many of these applications is still evolving. But this is also where it's important to separate established medical treatments from many of the claims you'll hear on social media. In medicine, vagus nerve stimulation typically involves an implanted electrical device, or in some cases, a medically approved and regulated external device that delivers precisely controlled electrical impulses to the nerve. The goal isn't simply to just turn the vagus nerve on, it's to carefully modulate its activity in ways that have been clinically shown to improve specific medical conditions. But this now brings us to many of the claims you'll see on social media about stimulating your vagus nerve and the health benefits that supposedly come with it. Here's the problem. The suggested ways to stimulate the vagus nerve outside of medical settings are all over the map. You'll hear people recommend things like slow breathing, humming, gargling, meditation, cold exposure, and now there are even commercial devices specifically marketed to stimulate the vagus nerve. But even if some of these techniques really do influence vagal activity, so what? The real question isn't whether they influence the vagus nerve at all. The real question is whether they influence it enough to produce meaningful physiological changes, and more importantly, whether those changes have actually been shown to improve health outcomes. So let's start with what probably has the strongest evidence behind it. Slow, controlled breathing. As you slowly exhale, vagal influence on your heart naturally increases, which is one of the reasons why your heart rate often slows during slow and prolonged exhalation. That's real physiology, and there's good evidence that slow breathing can help reduce stress and improve relaxation in many people. But it's important to recognize that this is very different from demonstrating that you've treated depression, chronic inflammation, chronic pain, or other diseases simply by stimulating your vagus nerve. The same general principle applies to many of the other techniques you'll hear about, including humming, gargling, meditation, and cold exposure. There are plausible physiological reasons why some of these activities may influence autonomic function, and in some cases, researchers have even measured changes in vagal activity. But demonstrating a temporary physiological effect is only the first step. Again, the more important question is whether those effects are large enough, consistent enough, and long-lasting enough to produce meaningful improvements in health. And for many of these techniques, the current evidence is still limited or evolving. And for interventions such as meditation and cold exposure, any health benefits that they may provide are likely mediated through multiple physiological mechanisms, with the vagus nerve representing just one piece of a much larger physiological response. But now we get to the growing number of commercial devices marketed for vagus nerve stimulation. Unlike the medically approved devices we discussed earlier, many of these products are marketed directly to consumers for general wellness. Some are based on legitimate physiological principles and may indeed influence vagal activity to some degree. But for the average healthy person, the current evidence simply isn't strong enough to conclude that these devices consistently produce meaningful improvements in overall health. Some may eventually prove beneficial for specific conditions, but many of the broader marketing claims tend to exaggerate what the current evidence actually supports. Now, I have talked to people who have said that they have felt better using some of these devices, and I'm not saying they haven't experienced some positive changes, but anecdotal experiences don't necessarily mean the general population will experience the same results. We also have to remember that the placebo effect is a very real physiological phenomenon, which is why we rely on well-designed clinical studies rather than personal testimonies when evaluating medical treatments. Now, if some people want to spend money on these devices, they can obviously do that. However, I think this also highlights a much bigger concern in health today. There are so many devices, supplements, and pieces of health advice circulating online that it can become overwhelming trying to decide what's actually worth your time and money. And one thing I found myself coming back to a little bit more lately in our videos is the importance of mastering the basics first. If you're not consistently exercising, eating a healthy diet, sleeping 7 to 9 hours each night, taking care of your mental health, and staying on top of your preventative health maintenance, then without trying to sound too bold here, what's the point of chasing all these other little health hacks? Why step over a $20 bill to pick up a $1 bill? Once you've built those 5 pillars of health into your daily life, then sure, let's absolutely talk about ways that we might optimize things even further. I definitely have picked up some of those $1 bills. Like, I use certain supplements and nutrition tracking apps and even cold plunge. But again, that's after you feel like you've got a handle on some of the foundational behaviors, because these foundational health behaviors that we've known about for decades are still by far the most important things that you can do for your long-term health. And hopefully, after watching this video, you also have a much better understanding of what the vagus nerve actually is, what it actually does, and how to evaluate many of the claims surrounding it using all that anatomical and physiological awesomeness that we just discussed. So thank you for watching, everyone. If you're interested in learning more anatomy and physiology and seeing more of what we do here in the Cadaver Lab, we have started doing more live classes. You can either join through a live stream from wherever you are in the world, or if you're local or you want to travel, you can come in person and actually see and touch the cadavers with me here in the lab. Plus, we just launched our app called Clarity that helps you track the 5 most important components of your health. All that info will definitely be in the description below. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.